Pete Sampras, US Open champion out of the blue last year and the holder of this title. After his first round defeat at Queen's 10 days ago, this event assumed even greater importance for him because, let's face it, nothing can take the place of good grass court competition on the eve of Wimbledon. Goran Ivanisevic seems to be peaking at just the right time. A semi-finalist at Wimbledon last year, his form suffered a dramatic slump until a few weeks ago at the World Team Cup. And since then, the serve has got faster, even more unplayable, and his confidence is building with every match. So Pete Sampras, only 19, seeded #1 here and the runner-up in one event so far this year at Philadelphia. And he had a couple of tough matches earlier on in this tournament, Christian Bergstrom and Mal Washington taking to 3 sets, but rather more straightforward since then. Ivanisevic is also 19, but he hasn't got to a final before this event this year. And he hasn't lost a set, having disposed of 2 Britons, a German and a man from South Africa. Well, mercifully, they managed to get off on time here, which is more than can be said for several events before this week, where the weather hasn't been really too kind, has it? We're going to join the match right at the start, and our commentary team this afternoon was Frew McMillan and Gerald Williams.
Oh, that's lovely. 15 love.
And Pete Sampras starting really a lot more quickly than he has been in certainly in his semi-final match.
I would have thought he's going to get to the net as quickly as he can against Ivanisevic, wouldn't you? Because, I mean, if he doesn't, then Goran's going to get there first, and whoever gets the net on a fast grass court usually wins the important points, I usually think.
30-15.
Yes, no doubt that the big Yugoslav who came through the qualifying here will be seeking to dominate the net with his big reach.
Net. First go.
His targets, Sampras, well, they're deep to the cross court. And that serves on the line, and that's a good opening service game by Pete Sampras.
First game.
This man a champion here last year, and he really follows in a good tradition of champions through the 80s. John McEnroe won here. Stefan Edberg won a couple of tournaments, beating Kevin Curran in 2 finals. So the tradition is one of fine champions. And let's face it, this man at the US Open last year, even if we missed him here in Manchester, certainly revealed pretty phenomenal form.
Time. Goran Ivanisevic to serve. 6 quickly, please.
Love one.
15 love.
I'm just hearing that the injury to Monica Seles seems to be a knee problem.
15 love.
And you can see by the look on Ivanisevic's face here as he's serving that he is finding this breeze. It's a really playful breeze. He is finding that a difficulty.
Net, second serve.
I would have thought that could have been quite a determining influence in this match, wouldn't you? 2 double faults already.
42.
Well, that's the problem for the opposition, really. Just when you figure you've got a slight chance against this chap, he serves in the big one.
Game Ivanisevic.
1 game all.
1 game all.
And I think that we would agree that there are not liable to be too many break points available here, and so if anyone gets to a 30-40 point, 15-40 point, they're going to have to play very well right there. Otherwise, this match could be a match of tie breaks. We shall see. 1 game all at the start.
Love 15.
And both of these players, of course, very big hitters of the ball, so we're not likely to see many shots from the back of the court, many long rallies. It's likely to be a fairly quick match, even though a close one.
Fault calls, I would have thought, further could disturb and ruffle.
I think the problem for Sampras is going to be he tends to hit his second serves with a lot more roll, and that's going to sit up, I think, for the Yugoslav. He's got to get in a lot more first serves.
Mm.
15-30.
Heading for Alderley Edge when last spotted that return. But there's a big wind-up on his shots in particular, and that's when a ball can move if there's a gust of wind. Shouldn't miss that.
15-40.
And if you give Ivanisevic a long time, of course, he's able to produce this forehand, even with a long swing, because he's got the time to do it. It's when the ball hurries through that he's not able to.
Now, here's one of those chances, in fact, 2 of those chances. 2 break points, 15-40. Oh!
Ivanisevic leads 2 games to 1.
And I would have thought that Ivanisevic, having got the break here, would be very keen to try and accelerate still further and see if he can't really throw in a lot of punches.
15 love.
Ivanisevic, he of the double-handed backhand, generally he does release it, and he certainly always does on the volley.
Love.
So what we got here is a bit of a spurt, a surge by Ivanisevic, and Sampras looks deep in thought.
Game Ivanisevic.
And that's a mighty impressive service game.
Ivanisevic leads.
To follow up the break. 3-1, Ivanisevic leads, first set.
Both their second serves are kicked second serves, allowing the opponent really to get a good crack at the ball. But up until now, Sampras has been throughout this tournament serving a lot shorter on their serves.
15 love.
He's got a lovely, lazy action, Pete Sampras, but it's very misleading because the ball flies through. And that's a shot I would like to see him use quite a bit more. He hasn't yet perfected it, the slice away to the left-hander's backhand.
30-15.
And it's not just the wind, but it's the weight of the hitting from Ivanisevic that's troubling him here. When Ivanisevic is really timing the ball, and he is today, he has right from the start of the match. That's beautifully cut out.
40-15.
Well, the beauty of Ivanisevic when he plays somebody like Sampras, a US Open champion, is that he raises his game immediately. So he's really hitting out here, whereas normally he might try and play himself into a match.
That's good.
Sampras.
3 games to 2. Ivanisevic leads first set.
Ivanisevic leads 3 games to 2.
He's played just about well enough through each round. Well enough to beat the man he found on the other side of the net. And now to beat Sampras, he knows he's got to play just about his best. Serve, bringing up short. Now Sampras has got to get his chin up, and somehow he's got to try and start returning this serve.
30 love.
The wind's been quite a factor here all week, but of course when you hit the ball as heavily as Ivanisevic, it really doesn't hold your serve up, or your ground strokes for that matter, very much, because the speed is really going right through the wind.
But really, these last couple of service games by Ivanisevic, Sampras hasn't really got a look in. No, that was wild.
Ivanisevic.
4-2. Ivanisevic leads.
Ivanisevic leads 4 games to 2.
Yes, possibly a wild-looking shot by Sampras, but of course when Ivanisevic is pressing you quite as much, you become a little frustrated and a little anxious to try and perhaps even out-hit the big Yugoslav, and that's not easy to do. But also good for Sampras, really, to try and perhaps relax, get through his nerves by hitting through the ball. And so a good idea as he waits for the wind just to abate a little.
Well, he can do no wrong at the moment, Ivanisevic, and I think if Sampras can just think a bit clearly, what he needs to, the philosophy he needs to hold on to now is that that it maybe can't go on quite like this. There's going to be a moment when Ivanisevic is going to miss a couple.
15 off.
Well, just take a look at this, because this is a marvel of a backhand. Very Connors-like, but hit even harder than Jimmy used to hit his.
30 off.
People down at court level, they're the ones who've got the best view of this, because they'll appreciate better the ferocious pace and speed that this ball's being cracked down there.
30-40.
They have a good view, Jerry, if they can actually see the ball. The problem is these guys hit the ball so hard.
Another break point.
Deuce.
And it's as well that Sampras produced a really good serve there, because 2 breaks down, and this set, I'm afraid, would have been curtains for him.
Advantage, Sampras. Left, second serve.
You can see from the way he keeps hesitating before he serves, and from the billowing of that balloon behind him, that he's
Sampras.
very anxious about this win. 4-3, first set, Ivanisevic
4
leads.
games to 3.
Here the lovely flowing Pete Sampras serves. There doesn't seem the urgency in his approach to the net. I think a little quicker movement of the feet perhaps on grass would benefit him a lot. You can get away with that sort of movement on a hard court, but on grass you've really got to be quicksilver, particularly when you're playing somebody who hits the ball as hard as his opponent does today. Ivanisevic loves playing chaps that he's supposed to be pushed by or beaten by. He raises his game from the word go. Falls asleep against those he's meant to win against easily.
Ivanisevic 4-3 up, first set.
He's quickly behind the players.
And in that last game, with Sampras serving, Ivanisevic was just a point from leading by a double break.
Thank you.
And if you were one of the ball boys from the North Manchester High School, that's the view you'd get of the proceedings today.
love.
Oh!
15 all.
Of course, he's always likely to clip the odd double fault, Ivanisevic, because he's going for both first and second serves. He hits his second serve as hard as a lot of people hit their first.
30-15.
And here an example of it, because this was almost a 6 over the third man boundary. Well, we all have favourite shots of players. The one I like, Pete Sampras, and I was telling this earlier today, is his forehand, and particularly the forehand down the line.
Now, 30 all point. That's always a particularly vital one. He's missed the first serve.
Second serve.
And if Sampras can just get this back.
40-30.
Yes,
Ivanisevic.
play overwhelming and intimidating. 5-3.
Ivanisevic
5-3 first set.
3.
I always thought that Sampras on grass might have slight problems with his backhand returns, particularly with the bouncing ball. He used to play with two hands, and there's sometimes, I think, when he would possibly still prefer to have that double-handed chop. Of course, he wouldn't admit to that, but it would give him more strength on the double-handed backhand.
15 love.
The bounce varying just a little bit more on grass than it does on a hard cement court like Flushing Meadow.
30 love.
Yeah, spotted that.
40 love.
Of course, neither of these players mess about, really. They're pretty fast in their stroke making, even if they're not grease lightning across the court. But a good view from our camera down right on the court.
Game Sampras.
Ivanisevic leads by 5 games to 4 first set. 5-4 serving for the first set.
$15 love. $30 love.
So the rockets continue to fly here. And it's one heck of a problem for youngster Sampras.
40 love.
3 set points. And it's gone ever so quickly. That just about sums it up. 6-4 first set in just 24 minutes.
Well, we're not going to get any very long rallies in this match, are we? But I think we have to admire, nevertheless, the way these chaps take advantage of their height, their physical strength, their equipment, their rackets, and, of course, pretty fast balls.
Love 15.
And the very thing that Sampras must not do, he's just done. Because while he's trying to figure out what he can possibly do to break up this barrage of serves from the other side of the net, he's himself got to be sure that he wins his service games.
Yes, an imperative for him that he just keeps ahead here in the second set. Always an advantage. He served first in the first set, mind you.
30-15.
Maybe there's a future winner here.
Boris Becker in colour of hair. No Sampras that. Well, again, anything short mid-court that doesn't press his man, that doesn't pull him wide, is going to be harshly treated.
$30-40.
And having to snatch there at the volley, he's got no time because it's coming across at such a lick. This is ferocious hitting by Ivanisevic. Out, just out. And another break.
Game, second set.
And Pete Sampras' shoulders drop. Ivanisevic leads by 1 set and now by a break to love. So what these people are watching is the bamboozling of Pete Sampras here.
15 love.
And if he could just get his racket to some of these, maybe he could try and block them or chip them or control them. And there's somebody looking more and more dispirited, and this delightful young man, Sampras. It is said of him, oh dear, every one of these is an arrow to his heart.
Yes, just as the ball seems to dig deeper, so Sampras gets deeper and deeper into debt here, because Ivanisevic, his tail is really up. And Sampras somehow doesn't seem to have the weapon, particularly on the backhand, which is where most of the serves are going to come to.
Game Ivanisevic.
Another love game to Ivanisevic. And he's probably heard the local weather forecast, which is that showers could be on the way. And if that's so, he's doing everybody a service except Pete Sampras by getting this over as quickly as possible. But it is said of Sampras that he's a simply superfine player when it's going well. But if he really gets behind, then he gets a bit flummoxed and a bit negative and a bit anxious.
Well, that's the serve that we really need to see him use a lot more. He's got to really hone that serve, cultivate it for grass.
30 love. $30-15. $40-15.
Well, Sampras, since the US Open, has not exactly had a rampant year. Just made the one final in Philadelphia.
Game Sampras.
Ivanisevic leads by a set and by 2 runs.
Ivanisevic leads 2-1.
So Sampras, as I was saying, really not having had a particularly good year. He was injured earlier in the year, so his first tournament on the circuit was in fact not until the Philadelphia tournament, the US indoors, one of the biggest indoor tournaments in the world, where he did do particularly well, losing a very close match to Lendl, 6-3 in the fifth in the final. Since then he's had a few problems, injury problems, but has overcome them, he says. You'll remember that late last year he was suffering from shin splints, which is one of the problems that Monica Seles in fact had, but I don't think necessarily the problems that have caused her to pull out of Wimbledon. But I suppose the big question at the moment, Jerry, is whether a qualifier, Ivanisevic, can go on to win a tournament. And this hasn't been done many times, only 15 times since 1978. And in fact, on one of those occasions in Florence, Ivanisevic as a qualifier, and a genuine qualifier then, because he couldn't get into the main draw because of his ranking, lost in the final.
Well, he just blankets the net too. It's not just the power, but it's the telescopic reach.
For serve.
And I would have thought in the matter of psychology right now, he is to Pete Sampras, a great giant here from another planet. And Sampras just doesn't know what to do. And that ball reared up.
30 love.
Somebody suggests from the planet Goran. I think that's probably where he does come from too.
$40 love.
Well, if they do breed such people on the planet Goran. Of course, they breed other types as well. We'll think of Goran Pripyat, who plays so dissimilarly from this Goran. Pripyat all stealth and guile, and as dark as Pete Sampras.
Game Ivanisevic.
Another love game. And serves keep thundering down.
Ivanisevic leads.
3-1.
3-1.
Ivanisevic leads, and 1 set to love.
Well, there's nothing more disheartening for a player than to actually be aced on a second serve. It makes you feel so helpless, so foolish.
So now, what can Sampras possibly do to stem this barrage? This violent barrage.
15 love.
Perhaps something really dashing and daring, just moving in and trying to block that serve. It can't do any worse.
Or
Or even stand right back when Ivanisevic is serving. That might be an idea.
love.
Well, of course, what is paramount really is to win his service games and then try and tackle somehow the Goran Ivanisevic serve.
Game set.
2 love games in succession. That might back him up a bit. 3-2. Ivanisevic leads, and by 1 set to love. The ball boys, we've all agreed they've done a very good job here. They're the lads from North Manchester High School for boys, and well done Mr. Warburton, who's trained them. They've done a very good job, and while we're handing round credits, I think the groundsman here deserves one, don't you, Fru? Because the conditions have been absolutely awful.
Conditions have been very tough for producing good courts, and we've been watching them all week because we have been getting here pretty early in the morning. The rolling and the cutting of the grass, and of course the moving of the excess waters that have flooded onto the covers with what yesterday was a pretty heavy downpour. But a thought that crosses my mind about these ball boys is that here is a provincial tournament, of course, so important for Britain, I feel. How many players haven't you heard of who've ball boyed somewhere around the world at some stage in their lives and gone on to become great players?
Did you?
Yes, I did.
You did? For what, Davis Cup or something?
No, I used to ball boy for the touring pros who came out to South Africa, Frank Sedgman, John Bromwich and co.
First time I ever saw Sue Barker. She was a ball girl at Torquay.
Well, there you are. That's why I think these tournaments are so important, because from amongst these and from people in the crowd here, there will be no doubt players of the future.
6-4 first set. 3-2 with the break. Ivanisevic in totally intimidating form here.
15 love.
And he just looks in a stew. It's as simple as that.
Well, he's just totally bamboozled. He's bamboozled by the bounce, and he's also bamboozled and disheartened totally by the pace with which this chap hits the ball, which is why I say he's finding difficulty not only getting to the ball, but when he gets to it, to actually have the strength in the way, the technique with which he plays his shots, particularly on the back, and to counter them.
40 love.
And even when Sampras managed to connect at all, which he doesn't many times, his forehand return here completely unable to control it. And another ace. 3 service games in succession now by Ivanisevic. He hasn't conceded a point on those. 4-2 he leads.
Sampras, who's the 8th seed at Wimbledon next week, and he'll be pleased because he plays not a pushover clay courter, Haiti of Argentina, and a possible match with Rostano in the second round. And he is in the Ivanisevic section of the draw.
15 love. 40 love.
So even though that slice serve was hit with not a great deal of slice, there was still enough movement there to confound Ivanisevic.
Oh, nice tap. That's another love game to him now. So his serving's going much, much better now.
Ivanisevic leads 4-3.
Joe Brandy just behind that ball boy, sitting there. He's the coach to Pete Sampras. So they're trying to figure out something here and try and have a word with Sampras afterwards. What do you think he should do, Fru? What would you advise if you got the chance?
Well, I think a lot of what he should do should really have been done on the practice court. I think, and I believe this for some time, that he's really got to develop his slice serve away to the, in this case, the left-hander's backhand. And it's a shot that can be used so well against right-handers on grass as well. He tends to hit over the ball. And that's fine when he's hitting 90% of his first serves in. But unfortunately, you see the ball toss is quite a long way over his left side. That means that he's hitting over the ball most of the time. I know he can play either of those serves, the flat or the kicked, and he has as well the slice serve in his arsenal. But unfortunately, he just hasn't perfected it. He doesn't play on grass enough to realize that that is a serve that is required. And I'm sure if he'd hit just hundreds and hundreds of balls prior to these grass court tournaments, we'll remember he lost first round at Queen's last week.
15 love.
His serving would be so much more powerful.
But his dilemma here is to make a return. As simple as that.
$30 love. $40 love.
Sampras hasn't yet scored a point off Ivanisevic's serve in this second set.
Game Ivanisevic.
5-3, he leads.
Ivanisevic leads 5-3.
No, that's pretty frustrating stuff, but still, had Sampras been able to hold on to his serve, as Ivanisevic said yesterday, he was not going to bother about Gary Miller really until they got into the tiebreaker. And I'm sure he would have believed that today. He would have figured that Sampras would be serving so well that the match would be actually won in tiebreaker. So he'll be delighted that he's able to break through the Sampras serve.
15 love.
This is Sampras then serving to stay in this match. 3-5 down and 1 set down, and to retain this title.
$30 love.
Oh, left.
40 love.
So this has been pretty devastating serving, really, by both players. And there, that slice really opens up the court for the volley.
Game Sampras.
So nobody's scoring anything against the servers now. Remarkable, this. 5-4, Ivanisevic leads in 1 set to love.
Yes, in 8 games, in fact, we've had 1 point against the serve. So, although I've been complaining about the fact that Sampras is not serving as well as he should be, still, it's a pretty outstanding serving. Of course, we're only judging him by his own high standards. You remember against Lendl at the US Open, he served 24 aces in 1 match.
This is the trophy that in about a minute's time Goran Ivanisevic is going to be serving for. The trophy that was won by Pete Sampras last year.
Time.
And won by another left-hander, John Patrick McEnroe, in '82. And by the current Wimbledon champion, Stefan Edberg, in '87 and '88. So there's some pretty big names on that trophy.
And now there's a pretty big server about to pound down another barrage of unreturnable aces. And if he can do it just 4 more times, the title's his. 6-4 and 5-4. It's been a whirlwind.
Well, this has got to constitute something of a dramatic breakthrough here, because this is the first point by Pete Sampras, it seems, for an eternity. On the Ivanisevic serve, that is.
15 all.
But you've got to grasp at straws. You've somehow got to tell yourself, well, it is a breakthrough. Maybe I am going to break through, because if you don't do it now, it's history.
30-15.
No call.
Well, Sampras thought it hit the line beyond the service line. Very close. I think he may have been right, Sampras, but very close. And the umpire, Daniel Leconto of Gadsden, Alabama, wisely not overruling.
Left. For serve.
Well, now you can hear from the applause that they sniff this too. There's just a glimmer of hope here for Sampras. And that's what happens when he gets one. And that takes Goran Ivanisevic to match point. This is his 6th final of his career. He's won 1 title before. That was last year, the tournament in Stuttgart. And it is his title, a truly remarkable performance in very difficult conditions. Ferocious serving of a quality and a violence that really it's very difficult to imagine anyone else is going to better. For Pete Sampras, well, he was like a boy just trying to get one look in, to just get the door open. And every time you thought he might get a toe in the door, it was slammed shut.
So there's confirmation of Ivanisevic's success. And he only dropped 6 points against the serve in 12 service games, which is a really extraordinary performance. So at the presentation ceremony afterwards, what was it, 40-odd minutes? He'd hardly been working for it, had he? And who's to say that he won't be accepting an even bigger and more prestigious trophy in a fortnight's time at Wimbledon? I mean, it was a busy...